Get the mic? All right, go for it.
Okay. I've got a question for you. Yeah, I'm starting with a question. What does the United States have in common with Papua New Guinea and no other industrialized country in the world? Can you guess it? Come on, ladies. Can you guess it?
Paid leave. Ladies.
More women than men.
We don't actually have a national paid family leave program. So let me tell you about why this is important. Because of that, we force workers every day to choose between earning a paycheck and caring for their families when they need it. Exactly. And it is such a drag on the U.S. economy. It's something that actually harms us, our economy, and our families. So let me tell you the problem. Every worker in America, every single one, is going to have a moment in life where they have a crippling decision to make. Do they bring home a paycheck, or do they care for a loved one who needs their help urgently? Whether it's a parent who's dying. I had a worker, my speechwriter, and his mother was suffering from cancer. And he knew that he needed to be by her side for at least a few weeks before she passed. I made sure my office had paid leave so he could do that. There are so many instances where workers need to meet a family need that's really real. Whether it's a new baby, whether it's a sick child or a sick family member, or you're sick yourself, or an ill spouse. So the truth is, this is something that's going to affect all of us. And it doesn't just affect us and our ability to provide for our families, but if you are a low-wage worker, or you are a worker who doesn't have access to leave, which is 8 out of 10 of us don't have access to paid leave, you do have to make the choice. Do I earn the paycheck that actually feeds my family, or do I meet the urgent need? And just imagine that crippling decision for you when you know you can't actually survive or feed your child if you're not at work. Imagine your child in a car accident and in a wheelchair and not being able to care for her. I've met that mom. Imagine the new mom whose baby's in the ICU, holding on for her dear life and not being able to be by that infant's side. I met that mom. I can tell you this is a real problem that affects everyone. It's also a major drag on the economy. Because the absence of paid leave in this country, it costs us $20 billion a year. $20 billion a year where people aren't earning when they do need to leave the workplace to meet that family need. Less money going to our small businesses. Less money going right into the economy. So what's the answer? Do we have a solution? Yes, we do. I have it. Let's pass a national paid leave bill that actually works. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's an earned benefit, just like Social Security. It costs about $2 a week for the average worker. That's the cost of a cup of coffee a week, and your employer matches it. Seems like it's pretty reasonable, right? And what does it give you? It gives you the ability to take up to 3 months off when you need it. It gives you the ability to earn an income, up to 66% of your income, when you need it. It means you're going to make your mortgage payment or your rent payment or your car payment. It means you're going to be by your dying parent's side. It means you're going to be with your loved one when they need you. It makes so much sense. So what's standing in the way? What do you think? What do you think? Yeah, money? Yeah. No, I don't think that's it. It's that our legislatures do not represent us well. They look at this issue and they say, oh, it's just a women's issue. Well, you know what? We are 52% of the U.S. population. Pretty important. And it is a women's issue, but it's also an economic issue. It's an issue that affects our small businesses. It's an issue that creates economic justice. It's an issue that affects our lowest income workers. It's an issue that affects all of us. It is a global issue. And so we need to ask more of our legislatures around this country. We need to lift up the voices of the people who feel left behind, and we need to pass the bill. The good news is we're far closer than we ever were before. I've been working on this since 2013. When I started working on national paid leave, I only had a handful of Democrats who even supported it. Today, most Democrats do support it. Even Republicans support it. Even President Trump sticks in his State of the Union. His ideas about how to get there are not very good. But at least he thinks that we need national paid leave. So this is a time, this is a moment, this is an idea whose time has come. And I believe that if we work hard, we can get it done. And we shouldn't stop there. We should also pass my entire platform of ideas called the Family Bill of Rights, which is a fundamental piece of ideas and legislation that helps all parents be able to provide for their kids. It first ensures a safe pregnancy. It ensures that everyone can have access to being a parent, our LGBTQ couples, so they can adopt. Making sure people who need access to fertility treatments can get it and have it be covered by insurers and low-income people. Make sure that first month of life that child survives. Having baby bundles where you bring home everything the baby needs in the first month of life. It works in states and countries around the world. Making sure we have national paid leave and making sure we have universal pre-K and affordable daycare. Common sense, simple solutions. So I hope you will join me in fighting for paid leave because the truth is, it's going to happen to you. And this solution is so elegant because it helps small businesses who could never compete. It helps the 8 out of 10 workers who don't have access today. And you know what? We know it works. You've had paid leave in California for 10 years. When we ask businesses, how's it going? 90% have said no negative impact on the bottom line or a positive impact on the bottom line. And 99% of businesses says it improves morale and it improves retention. And for young people who have the gig economy, who are working 4 or 5 jobs, changing jobs every year, it works because you're buying in as an earned benefit your whole life, whether it's part-time, full-time, big companies, small companies. And even though states are working really hard to pass it, a small state would never have the economies of scale necessary to actually pass a paid leave bill that would work. So every state needs this, the country needs this, and you need a president of the United States who will fight for it, and as president, I will fight for it, and I will pass it into law.
It's a super common sense and practical idea that you have. And as baby boomers continue to age and the caring economy is growing quickly, it's something that really needs to be figured out. But as you alluded to, is seen as a women's issue. How do we change that, and why is that?
Yeah. So I don't know why it is, because I think a lot of our legislators are male. And they look at women as the caregivers, so they don't think it's an important issue necessarily. But we can change that because they do need paid leave too.
Yes.
And they need access to that safety net, so when a loved one is sick, they can take time off and not be able to choose between that paycheck and their family members' lives. But you mentioned it's also a seniors issue, which I think is a group of people we should really be engaging on paid leave. For a lot of seniors, a lot of our grandparents, they have now become the primary caregivers because their daughters or sons can't take time off to meet the needs of a new baby or an infant or a loved one. And so they are forced into primary caregiving just because there's no other choice in that family. And also, also, there's a lot of seniors who would love it if their daughters or their sons could be available to actually meet their needs when they're sick or undergoing cancer treatments or need rides to the hospital or rides to the doctor. And that happens all the time. And again, with no flexibility, you can't help your parent when they need you most.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. So I want to bring in inequality, right? Especially when we talk about race, because historically many policies have had disparate impacts on different communities, right? When we talk about race, class, and you were just talking about gender. How will you ensure your plan is distributed equitably?
Yeah. So this very much is a racial justice issue, because the truth is a lot of our lowest wage earners are women and women of color. We know that 2/3 of minimum wage workers in this country are women. And because there's no national paid leave, every time a woman has a family emergency, a new baby, or a sick loved one, they have to choose between earning the paycheck and actually meeting the need. So for a lot of low-income women, they quit their jobs. When you quit your job, you rarely ramp back on into your industry at the same pay or the same seniority. And so as a consequence, lower wage workers, they never get off the floor. We call it the sticky floor. It just keeps pulling you down and pulling you down because you never can get out of a minimum wage job. So for black women, for women of color, low-wage women, national paid leave will allow them to earn at their fullest economic potential, more than anything else, because literally every emergency, every new child, every family emergency, they're the ones who have to start over at the bottom rung. The sticky floor holds them down, and they never get off it. They never are able to earn a real living wage to provide for their families. And the reason why this bill creates equality, racial equality, is because it applies to everyone. It's not just for the companies that afford it. It's not just for the highly educated, well-paid lawyers and accountants. That's who offers paid leave because they're desperate to retain female professionals. This has to be available to all workers, all industries, no matter what. That's why it needs to be federal and it needs to be a national priority.
Thank you, Senator. We are now going to shift to a question from a MoveOn member, which we've solicited from MoveOn members across the country and can be on any topic. So we are shifting gears here with a question from Juanita, a MoveOn member in Arizona, who asks, what questions or what actions would you propose to improve the lives of people living in Central American countries where poverty and violence are high?
So one of the worst things President Trump has done is he's left the world stage. You know, America used to be the beacon of light and hope. We used to be a world leader where other countries would follow us, that we would set the standard and they would follow our lead. Not under President Trump. He shuns his responsibilities. He doesn't want to meet the needs of allies and other countries that we have always worked with, whether it's NATO or the EU, South America, Central America, Mexico, or Canada. He's adversarial all the time, fighting for fighting's sake, not because he actually wants to accomplish something or get something done. So there is no better example of this than the blind eye he is turning towards Central and South America, to suffering, to civil wars, to gang violence, to drug violence, and he's closing our border. He's putting up a wall to say, we're not here for you. He has radicalized and upended the entire nature of asylum in this country. We used to be a country where we welcomed people. Emma Lazarus' poem, send us your tired, send us your poor, send us the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. It used to stand for something. The Statue of Liberty used to stand for something, but he's unwilling to help refugees from Central and South America right now. So what I would do as president is two things. Number one, I would use our investments, our political will. I would use our diplomatic efforts to help stabilize those countries. Because I can tell you, just imagine yourself. Imagine you have a boy, a teenage boy. Imagine if he stays in your community. He will not only be taken into a gang, but he will most likely lose his life within a year. What would you do? What would you do? Would you send him to a country that he might have a shot? Would you? I would. I would do anything to protect my child from death and dismemberment and a horrible life. So we need to recognize the absolute human need and be the leaders that we are. We are the strongest, wealthiest country in the world, and we don't act like it. Under President Trump, he demeans the vulnerable. He actually punches down. He wants us to close our borders and look inward. He wants us to be afraid of our neighbor. He wants us to fear immigrants and refugees. I will restore what's been lost as president. I will restore that beacon of light and hope. I would create a proper asylum system in this country. I would have real immigration judges that are appointed for life, that aren't just reporting to the Attorney General. I would have lawyers assigned to asylum seekers. I would ask asylum seekers to come to ports of entry and have a community-based process where they can have a hearing and actually apply for asylum status. And I would take all that work and take it out of Homeland Security, and I would put it into the Department of Justice where it used to be.
Thank you, Senator. We have a couple minutes left. I'm going to ask you this last question here. So a critical, important report came out this week. It was called the Black Census Report. And it's pretty much one of its kind. It was conducted by the Black Futures Lab. And in the report, respondents said that politicians do not care about Black people. And so the question to you is, how are you working to ensure that Black people feel that they're included in your campaign and your vision for the country, understanding that the black African Americans is a crucial part of the Democratic base?
So I believe in equality in this country. I believe it's a strength. But we have the issue of institutional racism and systemic racism. We have the issue of income inequality. And we have an issue of the wealth gap between Black America and white America. And that report was amazing. I read it. And it was the first of its kind because of the broad-based nature of it and who Black America trusts. I can tell you politicians was way at the bottom. And rightly so. Rightly so. So as president, I will take on institutional and systemic racism and income inequality and the racial wealth gap seriously and directly. The first thing I would do is support Congresswoman Jackson Lee's bill to study reparations and make recommendations about how to address them. To address the wealth gap, there's a platform of 10 excellent ideas. 2 of them, one is have postal banking to actually deal with the fact that 30% of America are unbanked and underbanked, largely communities of color, so they can get access to banking, savings, checking account, and not have to be vulnerable to predatory lenders and predatory practices. 2, I would support baby bonds because I think it's an excellent way to begin to accrue wealth. I would deal with institutional racism in all the places it exists. It exists in our healthcare system. It exists in our education system. It exists in our economy, every aspect of opportunity. It exists in our criminal justice system. And I'll just give you a few ideas. In healthcare, take on maternal mortality, for God's sakes. Honestly, if you are a Black woman in America today, you are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. In New York City, you are 12 times more likely to die in childbirth and within a year of giving birth because of institutional racism. And so I have a solution. I support a lot of ideas, but one is you have the equipment in the delivery room and the training that's necessary to make sure that racial bias doesn't exist in the delivery room. On criminal justice, 2 ideas. Let's decriminalize and deregulate, deschedule marijuana. Do it. Because the racial issues in how enforcement is made. If you are a white young man in America, you are treated very differently than if you are a Black young man or a brown young man. In fact, if you're Black or brown, you are 4 times more likely to be arrested for possession of marijuana despite the same usage. So let's actually decriminalize it and restore the communities that have been held back because of the unfair enforcement policies, and then fully deschedule it so that patients can get access to the medicine that they need. One other idea, end cash bail. End it. End it. End for-profit prisons. Stop the industry that locks up Black men and Black boys as a business model. End it.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator.
Senator
All right. Give it up for Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you.
Gillibrand,
Very
thank you so
wonderful.
much. Thank you. That was fantastic.
Very, very good.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget your jacket.
All right, thank you so much. All right.